Here we go. Let's see how we did today. What I expect is that everyone was able to get through the first 6. Problems 7 and 8 were definitely there for the folks that were going super fast. So let's see how we did. The original function is y equals sine of x plus cosine of x plus e to the x plus e to the negative x. If I want to take a derivative, since I don't have any multiplication, I don't have any division, I can just take the derivative term by term. The derivative of the sine is cosine. Check. Plus, derivative of the cosine is negative sine of x. Check. Plus, derivative of e to the x is e to the x. Check. Plus, derivative of e to the negative x is negative e to the negative x. I can clean that up and say that y prime equals the cosine of x minus the sine of x plus e to the x minus e to the negative x. There we go. That's number 1. Hopefully everybody got that one right. Okay, number 2, we have f of x is equal to the sine of x squared. This is a chain rule problem, and your baby is x squared. So if we're going to use the chain rule, we take the derivative of the mama, which is cosine. Derivative of the mama is cosine, and you leave the baby alone, times the derivative of the baby. And for right now, I'm just going to write it that way. So we have cosine of x squared times derivative of x squared is 2x. And I'm going to write my final answer as 2x cosine x squared. Done. Okay, problem number 3. G of x equals x squared times sine of x. Okay, I didn't write that dot in the problem, but that dot means multiplication. Let me scoot this up a little bit higher so everyone can see it. And product rule, g prime is, take the derivative of the first. So let's just write it out. Derivative of the first times the second plus the first times the derivative of the second. Alright, derivative of x squared is 2x times sine of x plus x squared times the derivative of sine of x is cosine. That's it. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. For those of you that want to go a little bit further with the algebra, let's look at the two terms. Let's look for common factors. I have 2x over here. I have x squared. I can factor out an x, which is going to give me 2 sine of x plus x cosine of x. If you arrived at that answer, or the second answer, both are correct. They're algebraically equivalent. Nice job. All right, number 4. H of x equals x squared times sine of x squared. Again, that multiplication means to me we're going to be doing a product rule problem. So h prime is derivative of x squared, 2x, times, leave the second one alone, plus, now we leave the first one alone, times the derivative of sine of x squared. Oh boy. That's a chain rule problem. So I'm just going to write for now that we need to take the derivative of the sine of x squared. We haven't actually taken the derivative. We've just done the product rule. Now we have to attack this problem. If I'm going to take the derivative of sine of x squared, that x squared is the baby. So right now I'm just going to rewrite everything else. 2x sine of x squared plus x squared times the derivative. The derivative is, using the chain rule, you take the derivative of the mama, so you're going to get cosine, leave the baby alone, times the derivative of your baby. The derivative of x squared is 2x. You could go further. 2x sine of x squared plus x squared times cosine of x squared times 2x. I can multiply the x squared with 2x to get 2x cubed cosine of x squared. You can stop there. That's perfectly acceptable. For those of you looking for common factors, when I look at these two terms separately, I see they both have a 2. They both have an x, so let me factor that out. what I'm going to be left with is sine of x squared plus, if I take a 2x out of here, x squared cosine x squared. Done. Really done. Happily done. Acceptable answers. 1, 2, 3 different perfectly acceptable answers that you could give me. Let's move on. Problem number 5. We've got, just scoot that down. Problem number 5, j of x is equal to sine squared of x squared. I know we talked about this in yesterday's video. I don't want to work with sine squared. I think that's confusing. So I'm going to rewrite it instead as the sine of my angle squared. If I'm going to take that derivative, I've got a baby. There's my baby. That's an ugly baby. That is a big baby. But this really is just your chain rule. Chain rule says you take the derivative of the mama. Mama is big X squared here. 2 times, leave that baby alone, times the derivative of the baby. Okay, great. How do I take the derivative of the sine of x squared? That is a chain rule. It's a chain rule. I have the sine of a function. So my baby had a baby. I really don't want to think about that too much. We have 2 times sine of x squared times derivative of the sine of an angle is cosine. Leave the angle alone. Times the derivative of the baby is 2x. You could clean that up a little bit. 2 times this, times that, times that. It's multiplication. Multiplication is commutative. I can do the 2 times 2x to get 4x. Sine of x squared times cosine of x squared. That is a fabulous derivative. Later on, especially for the kids that are going to take Calculus BC with me, we're going to look at other ways to simplify this using a double angle rule and all sorts of great stuff. But I think 2 perfectly acceptable answers here, maybe others, but either of those 2 is great for me. Number 6, k of x is equal to sine of x over x squared. Okay, that one's not too bad. I see division. That's going to be a quotient rule. So, k prime, it's low d high, high d low, low, low. Okay, low, x squared, derivative of the high, derivative of sine of x, cosine of x, minus high is your sine of x, times d low, derivative of x squared is 2x, over low, low. You could stop there. You could go further and make it x squared cosine of x minus 2x sine of x. X squared squared is x to the 4th. Oop, gotta scooch up. Alright, we've got x squared times cosine of x minus 2x sine of x over x to the 4th. You could go further. I see a common factor of x. So I could get x cosine of x minus 2 sine of x over x to the 4th. I have an x in the numerator that's been factored out. I have x to the 4th in the denominator. I can cancel out that x with one of these, leaving me x cubed. And so my final answer, x times cosine of x minus 2 sine of x over x cubed. Done. I see 4 perfectly acceptable answers here. This first one, the second one where we rewrote the terms, the third one where we factored. Yeah, so I guess really just 3. All right, let's look at number 7 here. Number 7, we've got cubed root of the sine of x squared, and I think I called that L of x. Well, let's make our lives a little bit better. Cubed root, another way I can write cubed root is we write that whole function to the 1/3 power. There we go. It's a chain rule again. This is your baby. So when we take L prime of x, we are going to take the derivative of the mama, meaning we bring the power down in front, 1/3 sine of x squared, and we're going to reduce the power by 1. 1/3 minus 1, negative 2/3, times the derivative of the baby. Now, I didn't actually take the derivative of sine of x squared. I just wrote that I'm going to take the derivative of the sine of x squared. So let's rewrite everything else. 1/3 sine of x squared to the negative 2/3 power. Derivative of the sine of an angle. Chain rule, with that being a baby. The derivative of the sine is cosine, leave the angle alone, times the derivative of the baby is 2x. And I think if you made it to that part there, fabulous. Let's not worry about simplifying any further. Feel free to high-five your neighbor and move on. Problem number 8, last one. M of x equals x divided by sine of x squared. Let me move that down. M of x equals x divided by the sine of x squared. Inside here, we have a quotient. Outside, we have an exponent. It's a chain rule and a quotient rule. M prime of x. We take care of the mama first. Mama says bring the power down in front, reduce the power by 1, leave the baby alone. So 2x over sine of x to the first power times the derivative of the baby, the derivative of x over sine of x. We have taken the derivative of the mama, left the baby alone, times the derivative of the baby. How do we take the derivative of the baby? Quotient rule. So this is going to be 2 times x over sine of x times, we're going to do our low-de high, high-de low, low, low. Low, sine of x, d high, derivative of x is 1 minus x times derivative of the sine of x, cosine of x over cosine of x, the whole thing squared. And let's see, you can make it 2x over sine of x times sine of x minus x cosine of x over cosine of x squared. I think that's as far as we can go with the simplification. If you were able to get 4 out of the first 6 problems in the time that you were allotted, you should be feeling pretty good. There are some really hard problems in here, and hopefully your skills are getting better. We still have about a week and a half before the next unit exam, and then a little more time before the trimester exam rolls around. I have no doubt we are all going to be very well prepared when the time is right. For now, just learn as much as you can, take good notes, and I will see you guys all when I come back on Monday.